Hi everyone, this is Kelly Ann with Church Windows. I am the presenter for today's user group or webinar. Today we're going to take a look at version 18, which is not currently out. If you notice on my screen, we can see in the upper right corner version 18.15.0. This is currently in testing mode here with the programming, so it is not out yet. We do not have a release date because when we're testing, we don't know what we'll come across, but expect it sometime within the next few months. Last week I did a preview webinar on the attendance screen, attendance entry and browse attendance in version 18. Today we're going to take a look at the visit screen, which we don't get a lot of calls about the visits area, so maybe it's just really easy for people to understand, or I have more of a feeling that it's highly underutilized. The visits area is where you can record visits to by different people in the church to different locations to any of the people in your database. And at the very end, I'm going to show you in security how we can really pare down the security for the visits area as well. It has a lot more options for security. Before we get started looking at visits, just a few quick intro things. If you arrived early and you are new to the GoToWebinar software, we did have a presentation running that shows you how to use the GoToWebinar toolbar. So we're not going to cover all of that just because we only have 20 minutes to cover the material today. However, I do want to point out your audio method, you can choose either the phone or a mic and speakers. But if you don't have speakers, or a microphone, you need speakers. If you don't have a microphone, that's perfectly fine because I'm not going to unmute people to ask questions. Instead, you can open up the question panel on your GoToWebinar toolbar. And Ross is in the room as well today. And as I'm working through showing you the visits area, if you have questions, you can type those in, or you might want to hold off until I show you all of the visits area because your question might get answered, in the next 5 minutes as I continue working through visits. Also, out of respect for everyone coming today to see a preview on version 18 in the visits area, try to keep your questions to that topic. If you have other questions or questions specific to your data, those are best answered either calling support or emailing your question to support@churchwindows.com. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the visits area. Already pointed out, I already had version 18 open, and let me point out once more in case you joined us a little late and missed it. Right in the upper right corner on the opening screen of Church Windows, we can see the version. The most current version available to you right now is 17.14.4. Again, today we're doing a preview of version 18.15 and looking at the visits area. So let me go ahead and get rid of that drawing, my purple pen. I love purple. And we'll go ahead and click on membership. The visits area is in the membership module. So we'll go ahead and click on that to open it. And here it comes. Visits, if we look, let me get my spotlight back. If we look here in the lower right corner of our membership portal, as we call it, we see Visits has its own button we can click on. Nice little icon with a flower that says thinking of you, something we might do on a visit. To open Visits, we just click on the word Visits. Now, if you do use the Visits area in the current module, you'll see there's a lot of similarities. Don't get overwhelmed when you first come into this area because it's very similar to what you already have. You can just do a lot more with it, and this is an area in your current version where you can allow certain people access to visits if you have security logins and passwords set up. So it's a great place to put confidential information. You might be visiting someone at the hospital or rehab, or you might want to put information in there that is confidential and you don't want everyone in the church viewing. So visits, you can really lock down, especially when you move to 18, you can lock down different parts of visits. We can allow people into visits and only allow them to see certain parts of it as well. Or you can lock people out of visits entirely because of the confidential information you may enter there. If we start in the upper left, you'll see here we have the person field where we can look for the person we'd like to see. Now we don't have a lot of visits data in here, and I didn't go ahead and just enter anything for 14-15 because I know we have some in for 2011. So we're going to kind of go back to the past, and I'm going to set my visit date to look at beginning with 1/1 of 2011. So if you have visits in for your current year, when you come into this screen, it's going to look like this. You're going to see what we see at the top, and then down in the middle, it's kind of like browsing your visits. It's like any of the browse screens and any of the programs. Here, based on what we filtered to, we're going to see all of the visits for what we filtered to. Now, upper left, we can opt to see inactive. That would mean someone we've marked inactive over in the donations module. Or terminated people. We can see those people's visits by checking inactive, terminated. Or we can search for a particular person we can start typing their name in this field, or click the X to clear that out. Or we can click the arrow here, which will give us a drop-down list. And then we can click on the name we like, and then it will only show us that individual's visits. Or we have arrows at the end of that field where we can scroll back through this alphabetically, or the right-facing arrow would scroll alphabetically towards Z and show visits or show the different individual names and any visits they have entered. Now, right here in visits, if you need to enter a new person, you went right into visits and forgot this is someone new and you need to add them to the program, we can click the plus sign and choose Add Member or Add Visitor. I'll just click Add Member. Add Visitor looks the same, but if we chose that, we'd be adding them to the visitor side of the database. And here comes the old Add Member screen where we can add a new family or add someone to an existing family. I'm going to cancel that. I'm not going to add anyone. Whoops, I scrolled. Here's our Add Visit button that we're going to click in just a few minutes, but I want to look at the rest of this screen before we move on to the Add Visit screen. Let me enlarge this so we can see it bigger and you can see everything. On what I like to call the Browse Visit screen, here we can choose to include members or visitors. You'll notice in the list we see some people with a V in bracket after their name. That indicates they're a visitor. If I uncheck Include Members, notice we're only seeing our visitors. By default, we see both visitors and members. But I can uncheck visitors and then I'm just seeing members on the screen. Now if I click on Change Dates, Filter, and Sort, you see we can filter this visit screen to see just a particular person. Again, the members and visitors and terminated options. We can look for a range of visits and only see visits that fall within that range. If you enter a follow-up date, you could filter your screen to show people that have a certain follow-up date. You can even record the duration of the visit and search for people that fit within a certain duration. You can also filter the screen to look by the person who visited, the reason the visit was made, or where the location they made the visit. And you also can enter comments. Then there's some other options down at the bottom. Once you make any choices here, let's just say we'll just try one here because I don't want to spend too much time here because we've got a lot to look at in these 20 minutes. We're almost halfway through. Maybe you just want to see things, people visited by the senior pastor. So if I choose that and click OK, then we should see for each of these individuals, they were indeed visited by the senior pastor. Now, bottom left, if I want to clear any filter I put in on that Change Dates, Filter, and Sort, I can just click Clear Filter. Now, let's look again at Change Dates, Filter, and Sort. That's this button in the upper left. If I'm moving around too quickly, I want to point it out again. We have some other tabs across here, columns. We can choose what columns we see going across the screen on our visit screen. On the right here, visible columns, that means what will be visible or what will show on the visit screen. Right now we are viewing everything. Maybe we don't want to see some of these. I'll remove some of those. Also, if you're printing a report using the print visits in the upper right, and it's going across to 2 pages and you want to scale it down so it maybe fits to 1, you can click on each of these column names and click adjust column width and change the size of your columns. We can also click on our group and sort tab and choose how we want to group this screen and change the fonts that will show on a report we print. Let's just click OK and I'll show you. Whoops. Did I filter to something that, oops, it changed my visit date. So let me change that back to 11. Didn't expect that. And say, okay, whoop, let's see. We still showing, yes. Now I narrowed down to some of the columns I wanted. And now if I say OK, notice it's just showing those columns. And I don't need to scroll across to see other columns I didn't even want to see. Now we can add comments, and those would show along the bottom for each person. Here we see when we click on Bob Allen, he's in the hospital for surgery. If you don't want to see those, you can click the arrow here to make that close down. And then if we want to open those back up again, we just click the arrow. Also on this screen, I like how notice at the top it says drag a column header here to group by that column. I can click on any of these column headers and drag them up to the top, and now it's grouping by whatever column I clicked on. Maybe I want to see them grouped by date and then by location after that. So now if I open these up, I must not have put location on some of these. So let's try person visited. Or yeah, so within that here it's going to group first and show us each date someone was visited, and then within each of these, I guess I don't have any with here we go. On 3-1 we visited Bethany Adams and then Jan K. Adams. So it's first sorting by date and then by person. And if we want to change that back to our normal screen, we can just click clear filter and it defaults to sort and show it grouped by the person that was visited. Now, if you haven't added any visits, and this will be a blank screen, and you can click on Add Visits right up here in the upper left. And on this screen, this is where you would enter a new visit. We would pick the person that we want to enter that visit for, and then we could choose our date by either clicking the arrow and choosing it from the drop-down list, or the drop-down calendar, or you can type the date directly in Date of Visit. You can also record the reason the visit was made, who visited them, where they visited them, a follow-up date, and back over here to the left, a length of the visit. If you need to add, now if we click the down arrow, we can see the different codes and descriptions we've already created for any of these. And if one is selected and it was a mistake, then you can just click the X at the end of the line to clear that out. To make new reasons, visited by, locations, there's an icon at the end of each of these lines. And if we click that, it brings up a little box where we can create our new code and description and click Add. Or if you have old codes and descriptions you don't need, you can click the minus to delete that. Now, if you do delete old codes and descriptions, it does remove it from any visits it was added to in the past. I'm going to say no here. But notice with visited by, we have the same thing. If we click that little icon at the end, we can add new codes and descriptions. Same thing for location. Here we could add comments as well. If we put in a follow-up date, notice that opens up now and allows us to add an event and scheduler for that follow-up date. And we can click, oops, uh-oh. I'll have to mention that I did not expect that. Clicking the little calendar kicked me out. So that might be something they're aware of and working on. And this is why we do not give a release date yet for 18. So we can find these little things and make sure they're fixed hopefully before it reaches you. So let me go back into visits and let me make a note. Click to the calendar and add visits. All right, let's go back and look at that add visits. And we won't click that calendar again. But if we have a follow-up date scheduled, we can go ahead and have that add that event in the scheduler module. So it shows in scheduler as something that is, if we put a person as who's visiting them and such, it would show that for that individual in scheduler. Also below, we can copy the details of this visit. We can either choose to not copy it, or we can copy this visit to everyone in the family, or just the primary, secondary people, or the children only. And these two last options do require for directory report order to be filled out and for this to work correctly. You also can choose to include comments or a follow-up date if you copy those. Just going to click cancel here, and let's go back real quick. And lastly, let's look at the print reports. Go back to 11 here. Say OK. Now the report, if I click print visits, it's going to print exactly what I show on the screen. So if you have columns showing that you really don't need on the report, that's where you'd want to go in to change dates. Click on columns and get exactly what you want to show on the report. If you're trying to get it down to one page, you might want to adjust your column width if you're clicking print and your preview is going over to 2 pages. But you want to get this screen showing exactly what you want on that report. And then if I click print visits, that brings up a nice landscape by default report because we're assuming you may be showing a lot of columns here, but it shows exactly what I was showing in my visits, or as I like to already call it, browse visits screen. Here I see my location is going off. I could maybe tighten some of these columns up a little bit. And a common misconception I've seen in the past with adjusting the column width is people thinking clicking this is changing the column width for every column. And if you notice at the top of the adjust, it says I'm adjusting person visited. So I can decrease some of these. And what you'd want to do if you're trying to get all of this on one, maybe I don't need I'm going to move their address and phone number off. But you might need to play around with the size of your column widths until you get it down to 1 page if you're trying to print this. And there I do have it down to, well, 2 pages, but all of my columns are fitting on 1 page. But it's printing a nice report of exactly what I've narrowed my visit screen to show. Let me go ahead now. That's all I wanted to show you in visits, but I do want to show you just how detailed you can get with the security for visits. If I go into admin and click on security, I went ahead and set myself up because our other 2 were inactive. So I'll click on my name. You'd want to go ahead and click on whatever name you want to change security for. Along the left, click on the name you need. Notice across the top, I don't think we had time for me to show this. I didn't even think about it. For attendance, you have all kinds of things you can do for attendance. That's new in 18. But today we're looking at visits. So we have now in security a tab specifically for the visits area of membership where you can choose whether people, the login, can view, create, modify, or delete. Viewing would mean just all they can do is go in and look at the visits area. Create would mean they can go in and actually add new visits and create visits. Modify would give them the ability to change things that are already in the program for visits. And delete obviously would give them the ability to delete a visit. But here you can choose to allow all those options for the entries, the visit codes, the report, and the selections on the reports. Whether or not people can add members or visitors from the visit screen, and that I think is really important because someone may not realize somebody's already in the program, maybe in visitors rather than members, or they may not realize they have a different last name. So they just keep adding people and you get all these duplicate records. So this may be something you may or may not want people to be able to do in visits. But there's even more additional security. Here, you specifically for a user can let them view any visit or only visits where the visited by code is a certain person. Maybe the senior pastor does a lot of things that are confidential, so it's okay for people to view all the visits except for the one the senior pastor makes. So I could allow myself access to everything except for what the senior pastor when he's visited people. Also, if we click additional comment security, the comments area in visits, that may be where you enter some of that more private or confidential information, if there is any. So maybe you want to allow people access to the entire visits area, but you don't want to allow them access to the comments. So here it's set to automatically allow people to view any visit comments, but we could turn it off entirely. And while the word comments would show at the bottom of the screen, they would not be able to view any of the comments entered. Or you can choose can only view comments where the visited by code is and choose which options you want there. So you can really pare down and choose exactly what part of visits you want to allow people access to. Maybe none or some or all. But you have a lot more options now. I think the visits area, I really think it looks different, but I think a lot of the different fields are still in the same place as the old visits area, and how you enter the visits is still the same. I think you just have a little bit more options on reporting and grouping and sorting, and you definitely have a lot more options in security with what you can allow people to see. So that is everything I wanted to show you in the visits area. It is, whoops, I went over by a minute. I apologize if anybody had to get out of here right at 2:20. Ross and I are going to stick around for any questions you may have. If you need to go ahead and exit the room, then just click the X in the right corner of your GoToWebinar toolbar, and that should exit the room for you. But again, Ross and I will stick around and see, are there any questions on the visits area? And again, if you entered late, this is a preview for version 18. This is not out yet. You do have a visits area in your current version of Church Windows, but what I just showed you today is a preview of what's coming up in version 18, which has not been released yet. Now, while I'm waiting real quick to see if anyone has questions, let me go ahead and close out of here, or at least minimize. I'm using a virtual machine. So let me get my regular desktop back. And for anyone still in the room, if you're maybe typing your question, while we're waiting to see if there's any questions, I want to point out just a few things on our website you may or may not be aware of. Maybe somebody else signed you up for this webinar. If you look under the left side under Church Windows Training, if you click on Free User Webinars, that takes you to the page where we list all of our different upcoming webinar topics. So feel free to sign up for any of these you like. They are free. Most of these are 20 minutes. Every once in a while we have an hour long. I don't know. If they say coffee break, then that means they're 20 minutes. Looks like we do have all coffee break webinars this month. Somebody just asked, I need a yes or no. No need to explain. Can reports be run on who has been visited? Yes, you can run reports based on who has been visited. So I'm sorry, I added more to that. Yes. Simple answer, yes. Also, on our website, some other really important things. If you ever need help with the program and you don't want to wait for a call back, or it's the weekend or after hours, check out under support the new version resources. Here, mostly it's movies, but I think I was talking with Craig, our webmaster. I was thinking webinar. I couldn't think of the word webmaster. I think we may be adding documents here as well. But this is always going to contain the most current version, free movies, and it is usually user group webinars we've recorded and cleaned up and prettied up. And this list just keeps growing, but these are free movies you can view at any time from any computer that can access Church Windows and has a movie player. And then under that, under support, is our support blog. And that is, you can search for documents or movies by clicking on a different module, and then it would show you the specifics under that. Or you can search for a keyword as well. So those are two places on our website that are very useful if support is not available. All right. I'm not seeing any other questions coming in. I think there was probably time while I showed you where the user groups were and the new version resources and support blog. I think that was probably time to have typed a question. If you're a slow typer and you're still in the middle of typing a question, then go ahead and hit enter on your keyboard so that comes through to us, and then you can keep typing the rest of it. That way I won't close the room before you get your question typed in. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions coming in. I think the visits area is pretty easy to understand once you go in there and start using it. And either everyone agrees and thinks it's pretty easy, or I overwhelmed you with all the new things, which I don't think visits is there's really too much. It's not that new. Everything, like I said, is kind of in the same place. You can just do a little more with that. So all right, since I don't see any more questions coming in, I am going to go ahead and end our user group for the day. I hope you enjoyed the preview and you're excited about the new changes to version 18 in attendance and visits. I think at the end of the month, I'm doing another preview on attendance, so if you missed the one last week, then go ahead and sign up for that user webinar. Click on that free user webinar link and sign up for that. Again, thank you so much for attending. Everyone have a great day, and I'm going to go ahead and close the room, so I'll say bye for now. I'm sure I'll either answer email questions for you or talk to you on support in the future. Thanks so much for attending, and have a great day. Bye.